In the frozen hell of the Ardennes forest, American soldiers trudged through knee-deep snow, their breath visible in the bitter January air. New Year's Day 1945. A day for celebration for new beginnings, but for these men, a day that would haunt them for 50 years. In a snow-covered field near the Belgian village of Chenogne, German prisoners stand with hands raised, expecting to be processed according to the Geneva Convention. But American soldiers approach not with handcuffs, but with weapons raised. Machine guns are being positioned. These boys are about to be machine-gunned and murdered. 2 weeks earlier, Hitler launched his last desperate offensive through the Ardennes, a surprise attack that caught American forces completely unprepared. The Battle of the Bulge would become the bloodiest battle for American forces in World War II, fought in temperatures dropping to 14 degrees Fahrenheit -10 degrees Celsius, with 8 inches of snow blanketing the ground. Into this frozen chaos came the 11th Armored Division, the Thunderbolt Division, newly arrived from England, green troops who had never seen combat. Their commander, Brigadier General Charles S. Kilburn, a career officer with 27 years of service, faced pressure to advance quickly against determined German resistance. These American soldiers had believed they were fighting a clean war, following the rules of engagement they'd been taught. But nothing could prepare them for what they would discover on December 17. December 17, 1944. Approximately 12:30 p.m. At the Bognes crossroads near Malmedy, Belgium, SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peper's Kampfgruppe intercepted an American convoy from Battery B, 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion. After a brief firefight, about 120 to 130 American soldiers surrendered. What happened next violated every rule of war. German SS troops disarmed the prisoners, herded them into a farmer's field, took their valuables and then, without warning, opened fire with machine guns from personnel carriers. SS officers walked among the bodies, shooting wounded Americans in the head with pistols to ensure death. 84 American soldiers were murdered in cold blood. Survivor Sergeant Henry Roy, Zach later testified, "They started firing at us. I was in the last row. When they started firing, it took a little while too. Anyway, when the bodies, the Americans in front of me, started being blown backwards towards me, I thought it was time to hit the ground. But they kept firing long after they thought we were all dead." The news of the Malmedy Massacre spread through American ranks like wildfire. Photographs of frozen American bodies began circulating. Anger turned to a thirst for revenge. Informal no prisoners orders began circulating, never written down, never officially sanctioned, but passed verbally from commander to commander. Word of the Malmedy Massacre spread through American units, creating a climate where killing prisoners became acceptable or even encouraged. The 11th Armored Division, still adjusting to combat, received these orders as they entered the Battle of the Bulge. General George S. Patton, commander of the 3rd Army, noted in his diary on January 4, 1945, "The 11th Armored is very green and took unnecessary losses to no effect." There were also some unfortunate incidents in the handling of prisoners. This oblique reference suggests Patton was aware of executions but chose to minimize them in his official record. On December 31, 1944, the 11th Armored Division fought a brutal battle for the village of Chenogne. German forces fought cleverly, hiding tanks under haystacks and setting American vehicles ablaze. The 22nd Tank Battalion lost multiple Sherman tanks entering Chenogne. American casualties mounted throughout the day. By evening, Chenogne had fallen to American forces after costly fighting. Approximately 60 to 80 German prisoners were captured during the final assault. American troops were exhausted, angry and traumatized. The stage was set for a tragedy. January 1, 1945. New Year's Day. Morning broke over a snow-covered landscape near Chenogne, Belgium. The temperature hovered around 20 degrees Fahrenheit -7 degrees Celsius, with 8 inches of snow on the ground and drifts up to 2 feet. American soldiers from B Company, 21st Armored Infantry Battalion processed German prisoners they had captured the day before. These prisoners, members of the Führerbegleit Brigade and 3rd Panzer Grenadier Division, were disarmed and under guard, expecting to be processed according to the Geneva Convention. But the atmosphere among American soldiers was thick with anger and a desire for revenge. Some had lost close friends in recent fighting. All had heard of Malmedy. The decision was made, whether at the division level by General Kilburn or at the company level by a disputed commander, the prisoners would not be processed. They would be executed. At approximately 12:30 p.m. on New Year's Day 1945, German prisoners were assembled in a field near Chenogne. Machine guns were positioned overlooking the field where the prisoners stood. Sergeant John W. Fague, a member of B Company, watched with growing horror as his fellow American soldiers prepared to execute defenseless men. Fague would later write, "Machine guns were being set up. These boys were to be machine-gunned and murdered. We were committing the same crimes we were now accusing the Japanese and Germans of doing." Fague noted in footnotes to his narrative that he had no knowledge of the Malmedy Massacre at that specific time, though word had spread through American units. The German prisoners, likely ranging from teenagers to middle-aged men, stood in the snow, unaware of their imminent fate. Some may have sensed what was coming. Did they pray? Did they think of home? Did they curse their fate? At approximately 12:30 p.m., the order was given. The .30 caliber Browning machine guns opened fire, their distinctive sound echoing across the snow-covered field. The rate of fire, approximately 400 to 600 rounds per minute, cut down the prisoners who had no means of escape or defense. The shooting lasted 10 to 20 minutes. After the initial machine gun fire, American soldiers moved among the bodies, shooting any who appeared to still be alive, similar to what SS troops had done at Malmedy. Approximately 60 to 80 German soldiers were killed in cold blood. 0 American casualties occurred. This was execution, not combat. The field fell silent except for the moans of the wounded and the wind. American soldiers who had participated in or witnessed the atrocity now carried a terrible secret. Some felt justified, revenge for Malmedy. Others felt horror and shame. All were complicit in a war crime. The immediate aftermath was as chilling as the execution itself. Bodies were left in the snow rather than being buried immediately. No official after-action report mentioned the execution. The cover-up began immediately through silence. American soldiers returned to their defensive positions and continued military operations as if nothing unusual had happened. But something had changed irrevocably. The moral boundary had been crossed. The revenge cycle was complete. The cover-up had begun. For the German soldiers who had been killed, there was no aftermath. They lay in the snow, their stories lost to history. For American witnesses, the psychological burden had just begun. Fague and others who witnessed the atrocity would process what they had seen. Some would justify it to themselves initially as revenge, but the reality of murdering unarmed men would haunt them forever. The Battle of the Bulge continued for 3 more weeks after Chenogne. The 11th Armored Division continued fighting toward Bastogne, making contact with 1st Army units on January 16, 1945. But the stain of Chenogne remained, hidden from official records but burning in the memories of those who were there. Historical sources suggest that Chenogne was not an isolated incident. Evidence indicates it was part of a broader pattern of revenge killings and no prisoners orders circulating among American units during the Battle of the Bulge. The no prisoners sentiment was a direct result of the Malmedy Massacre and was not confined to the 11th Armored Division. On January 25, 1945, the Battle of the Bulge officially ended. German casualties were approximately 100,000. American casualties were approximately 80,000. The 60 to 80 German prisoners killed at Chenogne represent a tiny fraction of these casualties, but their deaths were qualitatively different. They were murdered after surrendering, not killed in combat. The Malmedy Massacre was prosecuted at the Dachau military tribunals, where 73 Germans were prosecuted for Malmedy and related killings. Joachim Paper and others were convicted. But when German defendants attempted to use American retaliation killings as a legal defense, it was rejected. 2 wrongs don't make a right. In 1949, the U.S. Congress held hearings on the Malmedy Massacre investigation. Some testimony mentioned American retaliatory killings. Chenogne was referenced but not fully investigated. Political pressure to avoid prosecuting American soldiers was intense. According to declassified files, Supreme Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower demanded a full investigation when he learned of the Chenogne massacre. However, the 11th Armored Division was uncooperative, saying, "It's too late, the war is over and the units are disbanded." The investigation was never completed. No American soldiers were prosecuted for Chenogne. Official U.S. Army histories of the Battle of the Bulge omitted the Chenogne massacre. The focus remained on Malmedy as a German atrocity. American war crimes were not discussed in official accounts. Academic historians like John Toland and Stephen Ambrose mentioned American retaliatory killings in passing, but Chenogne specifically was rarely discussed in detail. The academic consensus was that it happened, but details were suppressed. Max Cohen, another American soldier present at Chenogne, provided additional confirmation in a declassified file accessed by researcher Harlan Dunaway. Cohen described seeing roughly 70 German prisoners machine-gunned by the 11th Armored Division in Chenogne. His account corroborated Fague's testimony. Wikipedia and Wikiwand entries compiled these sources, noting, according to eyewitness accounts, an estimated 80 German prisoners of war were massacred by their American captors. The prisoners were assembled in a field and shot with machine guns. The range of 60 to 80 prisoners is consistently reported across multiple independent sources. The historical debate about who gave the order to execute the German prisoners at Chenogne remains unresolved. Theory 1 suggests that the order came from division level, possibly from General Kilburn himself. Allegedly issued a verbal, "take no prisoners," order that was transmitted down through Combat Command A, possibly by Colonel Wesley W. Yale. Theory 2 suggests that the order came from the company or battalion level, without direct involvement from division command. A company or battalion level commander gave the direct execution order, possibly acting on perceived higher-level guidance. The name of the specific officer is disputed or redacted in official records. What is certain is that as division commander, Kilburn bore ultimate responsibility for the actions of his troops. Whether he directly ordered the executions or simply failed to prevent them, his leadership was being tested in one of the most brutal battles of World War II. Kilburn was relieved of command in March 1945, reverted to colonel rank, and retired in 1946. He was advanced to brigadier general on the retired list in 1948. No evidence exists that he ever publicly addressed the Chenogne massacre. The Malmedy Massacre was committed by SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Paper's Kampfgruppe, part of the 1st SS Panzer Division. Paper was not physically present at the shooting but was responsible for his unit's actions. His actions directly motivated the American retaliation at Chenogne. Paper was 29 years old in 1945, a fanatical Nazi officer and veteran of brutal Eastern Front combat. He was convicted of war crimes at the Malmedy trial, sentenced to death, later commuted to life, released in 1956 and died in 1976 when his home was firebombed. He maintained his innocence regarding Malmedy until death. The connection between Malmedy and Chenogne represents a brutal cycle of violence. German atrocity led to American atrocity, which could have led to further German retaliation, creating an endless cycle of atrocities. This cycle of violence is one of the most tragic aspects of war, demonstrating how conflict brutalizes everyone regardless of which side they're on. General George S. Patton, commander of the Third Army, made a diary entry on January 4, 1945, 3 days after the Chenogne massacre. The 11th Armored is very green and took unnecessary losses to no effect. There were also some unfortunate incidents in the handling of prisoners. This oblique reference suggests Patton was aware of executions but chose to minimize them in his official record. Patton was 59 years old in 1945, an aggressive, flamboyant, but controversial commander. His diary entry provides evidence that high-level commanders were aware of the Chenogne massacre but chose not to formally investigate or address it, contributing to the cover-up. Patton died in December 1945 from injuries in a car accident, before the war ended. He never publicly addressed the Chenogne massacre, but his diary entry became a crucial piece of evidence for historians investigating the incident. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of Allied Expeditionary Forces, was 54 years old in 1945. After learning of the Chenogne massacre, Eisenhower demanded a full investigation. However, according to declassified files, the 11th Armored Division was uncooperative, saying, "It's too late, the war is over and the units are disbanded." Eisenhower was methodical, diplomatic, and concerned with maintaining Allied unity and moral authority. His attempt to investigate demonstrates that at least some high-level commanders were concerned about the Chenogne massacre and wanted to address it properly. But institutional resistance prevented a thorough investigation. Eisenhower later became President of the United States, serving from 1953 to 1961. He never publicly addressed the Chenogne massacre, but his demand for investigation is documented in declassified files, showing his commitment to military integrity. The Chenogne massacre is part of a broader pattern of escalating brutality during the Battle of the Bulge, beginning with the German Malmedy Massacre and followed by American retaliation. Historians like Danny S. Parker and others have documented that Chenogne was likely not the only incident, though it is the best documented due to Fague's eyewitness testimony. Veteran testimonies from oral history projects indicate that a general, take no prisoners, attitude existed in some American units in the immediate aftermath of Malmedy. This attitude was a direct result of the Malmedy Massacre and was not confined to the 11th Armored Division. The pattern of revenge killings creates a brutal dynamic where both sides view the other as capable of atrocities, potentially leading to more desperate fighting and fewer prisoners taken on both sides. This cycle of violence is one of the most tragic aspects of war, demonstrating how conflict brutalizes everyone regardless of which side they're on. Modern military doctrine has evolved in response to incidents like Chenogne and similar wartime atrocities. Current U.S. military training emphasizes strict adherence to the Geneva Convention and the law of armed conflict. The law of armed conflict is now mandatory training for all branches of the U.S. military. Chenogne is used as a negative example in some military ethics courses. Modern military doctrine explicitly prohibits retaliation against prisoners of war and requires reporting of any violations. The recognition that war crimes damage military effectiveness and moral authority has influenced contemporary military training. The M1919 Browning machine gun used at Chenogne was eventually replaced by the M60 machine gun in general service, though variants remained in use for specific applications for decades. Modern machine guns like the M240 and M249 share some conceptual lineage with the M1919, though they incorporate significant technological advances. The cultural impact of the Chenogne massacre has been limited compared to the extensive commemoration of the Malmedy Massacre. No major films specifically about Chenogne have been produced, reflecting the continued discomfort with acknowledging American war crimes during World War II. In books, the Chenogne massacre is mentioned in some historical works about World War II, though it remains less well known than other atrocities. Academic interest in war crimes by the good guys has grown in recent decades, with Chenogne used as a case study in military ethics. Video games typically avoid depicting American war crimes, maintaining the narrative of American moral superiority. This reflects a broader cultural reluctance to confront uncomfortable truths about the conduct of American forces during World War II. The absence of a specific memorial to the German victims of Chenogne, unlike the well-documented memorial at Malmedy, reflects this discomfort with acknowledging Allied war crimes. The victims of Chenogne remain largely anonymous, their personal histories lost along with their lives. The Chenogne massacre challenges us to confront uncomfortable questions about war, morality, and human nature. The universal question is, what would I do if someone killed my friends? Revenge is a universally understood emotion, but the line between justice and atrocity can be blurred in the heat of combat. Understanding without excusing is essential. The Chenogne massacre doesn't negate the justice of the Allied cause in World War II, but it does recognize the universal human capacity for both good and evil. War brutalizes everyone regardless of which side they're on. The good guys and bad guys can become indistinguishable in combat. The lessons of Chenogne remain relevant today. Incidents like the Abu Ghraib prisoner abuse during the Iraq War and the My Lai massacre during the Vietnam War show that the challenges of maintaining discipline and moral conduct during combat persist. The importance of maintaining moral standards even when the enemy violates them cannot be overstated. The final assessment of the Chenogne massacre's significance in World War II history is complex. It represents a stain on American military history, but it doesn't negate the broader justice of the Allied cause. Understanding this complexity is essential for a complete historical understanding. The importance of remembering difficult historical events cannot be overstated. We must remember events like Chenogne not to diminish the service and sacrifice of those who fought with honor, but to recognize the universal human capacity for both good and evil and the importance of maintaining moral standards even in the worst of times. The human cost of the Chenogne massacre is significant for both victims and perpetrators. The German soldiers who were killed left behind families who mourned them, though their personal stories remain largely unknown due to the anonymity of the victims. The American veterans who witnessed or participated carried psychological burdens for decades. Some, like John Fague, eventually documented their experiences, while others remained silent. The lessons of Chenogne for modern military ethics are profound. The importance of maintaining discipline and accountability even under extreme stress cannot be overstated. The recognition that war crimes damage military effectiveness and moral authority has influenced contemporary military training. The concept of moral injury, distinct from PTSD, applies to many Chenogne witnesses. This psychological wound resulting from perpetrating, failing to prevent, or bearing witness to actions that violate deeply held moral beliefs, has been recognized in modern PTSD treatment. The connection between historical events and modern military ethics is direct. The lessons of Chenogne have influenced current rules of engagement, training protocols, and accountability mechanisms. Understanding this connection helps prevent future atrocities while honoring those who served with distinction. The personal relevance of the Chenogne massacre to modern viewers is significant. It challenges us to confront uncomfortable questions about war, morality, and human nature. The story forces us to consider what we would do in similar circumstances. The recognition that war brutalizes everyone regardless of which side they're on is essential for understanding conflict. The cycle of violence demonstrated by the connection between Malmedy and Chenogne shows how atrocities can create escalating brutality, making conflict more devastating for all involved. The importance of historical honesty cannot be overstated. Sanitized versions of history that ignore uncomfortable truths do a disservice to those who lived through these events and to future generations who must learn from the past. The call to remember difficult events like Chenogne is not about diminishing the Allied cause in World War II but about recognizing the full complexity of human experience during war. The soldiers who fought and died at Chenogne could never have imagined how their actions would echo through history, but everything we know about the morality of war traces back to choices made in that snow-covered field on New Year's Day 1945. What other chapters of World War II history remain buried, waiting to be uncovered? How do we balance celebrating victory while acknowledging atrocities? These questions challenge us to look deeper at history, to seek out uncomfortable truths that complete our understanding of the past. The Chenogne Massacre reminds us that history is not simple narratives of good versus evil but complex human stories of moral choices made under extreme pressure. It challenges us to remember not just victories, but difficult moral questions that arose during conflict. Next time on Uncovered World War II, the Allied bombing campaign that killed more civilians than Hiroshima. Subscribe to uncover hidden chapters of history that challenge what we thought we knew.